My name's Holden Clark, and this is Franklin Boulevard Media. I have been known to say both Gas House and G-Town, but I'm pretty sure that the majority of the time I call it the Gas House. So I'm from Gastonia. I was born here. I wouldn't say I was necessarily raised here. My parents, they had us moving all over the place, really. We were born here. Both sets of grandparents are here, but I ended up moving different states all over the place, but this was always home for us. We were always back here. Got one set of grandparents on one side of town, the other set of grandparents on the other side of town. But we always came back here during the summers. Anytime we ever left, this was always home, and ended up coming back here in high school and finished my 4 years at high school at Forest U and graduated there. And my wife, kids, my wife went to Forest U with me. My kids now are in high school, so there's something about Gaston County that makes it home and has always been home for us. Oh, there's so many good memories of Gastonia and Gaston County. My grandmother used to work at the BB&T, and one of the earliest memories I remember is I would sit there at one part of the day because my other grandmother would be dropping us off to visit with her. That was on West End BB&T over there, the Walmart near Middle School Road. But I remember that during half the summer, we would spend half the summer with one grandparent, the other half with the other grandparent. But we were always downtown. We were at the old Sears, it's now the baseball stadium. We were going to the post office downtown. And I remember as a kid thinking about how big that post office was. I remember getting my passport at that post office before we moved to China. My dad went over there for a position. Actually, the company that he was working with, their sister company, was over in Cleveland County. They're no longer there anymore, but they were making air conditioning. So he went over there to start up a manufacturing plant, and we were there, and while we were there, we adopted my little sister. She's about 12 years younger than me. She's in graduate school now, but it was cool. We were there for 2 years. I was there in my 7th and 8th grade year. Before I left there, I was at Cramerton Middle School for about 6 months, and then we came back and went to Forest U. When we came back, though, the Sonic was the go-to place. It had just opened, and that's where we would spend our football Friday nights at. It was before cookout was the cool thing for the kids. You just think about how the town had developed, and remember just getting something simple like a roundabout on Kendrick Road, and how much that impacted just us kids going to school. One of the coolest things about Gastonia that I always thought was all the different outdoor spots we had. And grandparents used to take us to that all the time. Things. Remember going and hiking Crowders, and then being able to get anywhere from here. This is, in my world, all growing up, Gastonia was the center of the earth. After graduating high school, my goals were always to become a lawyer. I think that's kind of what had set out in me. I had an uncle who, when I was about 12 years old, he would take me to court with him and let me go see everything that happened in court, and let me sit on a first-degree murder case with him for 6 weeks when I was 14. And so it was kind of always going there. I was playing in bands and wanted to be a musician really bad. But unfortunately, that just wasn't a realistic goal for me at the time. So I went off to Appalachian State, and while I was there, it was one of those things that this is what seems like the right path for me. I enjoyed the ability to help people. I enjoyed the ability to advocate for somebody who didn't know how to speak up for themselves. Always hated a bully and felt like being in court was a great way to stand up to a bully. And that has proved remarkably true in my work. But in high school, I didn't know that I would be doing the type of work that I am doing now. I always saw being a lawyer as only a criminal lawyer. I didn't understand that there were many types of it, and that's where I really was starting was, I'm gonna go be a criminal lawyer like my uncle was. I think the first time that my uncle took me to court, I was probably 10 years old. And when I say he took me to court with him, he would let me go and sit in the box and kind of see what he did. But at that point, he was already walking me up and introducing me to the judges. When I sat on the first-degree murder trial, and when I say I sat on it, I sat back, but he let me feel like I played a role in it. I was 14 at that time, and it went from jury selection all the way up to the judge finding a death sentence. I mean, it was a long and difficult 6-week case, but he wanted me to know what the real world was about. And my parents were 100% on board with that because they knew that those are things that we were going to experience in life. So after I graduated App State, I went to Charlotte Law, and most people know about Charlotte Law because of kind of the negative publicity that came along with it. But it's really an interesting story. Charlotte, when they first started up, they had professors from Yale and Harvard and Princeton. They brought in everybody that they could think of. I was in a class that was right before they got the full accreditation. That was my first year. While we were there, in my first year of law school, we got our full accreditation. And then the very next year, they went from a class of 100 students to 500 students. We had some of the greatest professors that you could think of and some of the greatest teachers and real life experiences. I was in courtrooms pretty much from the time that I started. They were sending us all over the nation doing trial competitions, and as far as my experience went, it was great. And I know some amazing attorneys that came out of there, but they got greedy. And that's why they lost the program. And they harmed a lot of people in the later years. And that was 5, 6, 7 years after I was out of there. But it was infuriating to see what happened. It didn't impact the experience that I had, though, with the professors that I had and the experiences that I was able to go. I mean, they sent me all the way out to San Francisco, Houston, Texas, New York, Boston on trial competitions where we were competing against some of the best trial teams in the nation and beating them. And that just speaks to the testament and the caliber of students that were coming out of Charlotte Law who may not have been a Harvard-level student, but in practical experiences, those folks were far better attorneys than the theoretical ones. Passed the bar first try. That was team one and done, as they say. I'll never forget getting my results. The results came out while I was on vacation down at the beach, and every one of my classmates were posting about their bar results, and I had to make a 4.5-hour drive home to get to my mailbox to open it up and get that letter out and figure out what it's going to say. And thankfully they lead with the word congratulations instead of something else. So at the very least, I will say that is the most interesting moment of my life, because it all hung in the balance of what was inside that envelope. After I got my bar results, I went and worked with Ken Snow and the Snow Legal Group over in Charlotte. And Ken is an awesome guy. He still maintains a great relationship with him. And Ken gave me my first job because he wanted to give me an opportunity to succeed. I was over in Mecklenburg County. I was doing some criminal defense work. I was doing a little bit of business work. And what I realized really quickly was I needed to learn how to practice law before I figured out how to bring in clients and how to help develop a business. I didn't have those skills yet, and I was trying to work them out at the same time. So an opportunity came up at the Gaston County Public Defender's Office. I had actually interned there when I was in law school. I figured out, wow, if I go and actually learn how to try a case and learn how to analyze a case, maybe that's going to help me later on. So I did that, and I was there for 3 years. During that 3 years, I did everything from a misdemeanor, lowest misdemeanor you can do in North Carolina, all the way up to a first-degree murder trial. And that was an amazing experience. And after that, after a while of doing that, and public defenders are under a tremendous amount of stress, and they carry very high caseloads, and I was looking for a different opportunity to kind of reset, and I was hired in a law firm here, Robinson Lauterbach, and they're now Robinson Lauterbach and Green, to do litigation for them. And essentially the practice was going to be real estate litigation, civil litigation, and maybe some family law. I loved who I worked with. Ms. Lauterbach remains one of my closest and dearest friends. It was remarkable to work with them because it was a practice that had been there in some iteration for 50 years. and just the history of the folks that they knew and the businesses that they had helped and the homes that they had closed across our community. It was really interesting. And I got to know so many great people through that work from all walks of life, from folks that Mr. Robinson had helped for years and years and years without ever asking for payment, to folks who were in our state legislature. Their practice was built around helping everyone and fixing problems for folks. And it was such a great experience. During COVID, though, I had made a decision that my practice and their practices could really be a lot better if they were separated, that the overlap needed to be in two different businesses for us to really be able to be successful. And so during COVID, I had actually mentioned that now was the time that I was going to do this, and we didn't know about COVID when I'd made that decision, and so Sarah, being the amazing person she is, gave me an opportunity to stick around because court got shut down, and my practice revolved around court. So she gave me a chance to stick around, and eventually court opened back up, and I said, you know what, I think now is the time for us to do this. If I don't, then I'll never do it. And number two, if I fail during COVID, at least I got something to blame it on, and I don't have to blame it on me. So I started Hometown Counsel July 1st of 2020, and we've now been open since then and had just incredible success because of the folks that we've had the opportunity to work with. Some of the greatest clients in the world, but it's because they're allowed to be real humans with us. We don't try to make our clients be a specific thing. We want them to be them, and that's who I am. I always introduce them as myself, not what they believe that an attorney should look like. And we've become a family because of that. I chose Gastonia because this is where home was. I also believe that in a blink of an eye, or by a butterfly's flap, or God's will, whatever you believe in, I believe God's will, that my situation could be any one of their situations, and theirs could be mine. I'm from Gaston County, so in order for me to understand people fully, I'm just looking at my neighbors now. So it made sense for me to be practicing at home, where I knew the things that people were going through, and I knew how they were raised and the history of their families, and it's not just one generation, it's 2-3 generations of what they've gone through. I thought that made it not easier to practice, but certainly made it where it was more personal. Gastonia it's growing tremendously. And with any growth, there comes headaches and heartaches, and there's folks that got their interest on their own pockets. But one of the things that's amazing about Gastonia, it's the resilience of the community members. Most of these folks, family members, at some point worked in a mill or some mill adjacent. They have all lost it all. They've all been there where one day they had jobs that were fantastic and the next day they had nothing. But the community still stuck together. And because of those jobs and because of the industries that we had folks that looked all different types of way, working side by side. And so Gastonia, as in and of itself, has had this really tight-knit community no matter where you came from or what you looked like or who you were. And I always thought that was a huge benefit to us. We kind of got a nasty reputation there for a little while, and that's some of the things that comes along with folks losing their jobs. But Gastonia is on the rise. People want to be here. People want to come here because we have so much to offer. The next steps in my practice is to continue to make real differences, particularly in the profession that I am in. There's a lot of things that can be done to help the judicial system get to a better place. We've got a lot of things a lot of resources that we could use to make it more efficient, to make it more accessible to folks. Part of that is things that we're not going to be able to choose because that comes down from the state onto what you can use and what you can't use. But also, part of it is pushing, and part of it is standing up and saying, no, we need these resources. This is why we should be doing it. It's introducing the concept to folks to get them on board so that there's enough pressure to make those changes. So that folks, when they walk into a courthouse, it's no longer intimidating. When they walk into the courthouse, they feel like they can find what they need to find and conduct the business that they can conduct. Or that they are able to access it from home if they can't get there. And that's hopefully where the court system's going. But also, most importantly, that when someone walks into the courthouse, that they walk in as a human being and nothing else. That it's completely equal across the board. And that we tailor things in the legal community to meet the needs of the individual person and not just take a blanket approach. And that's where I hope to help see the court system go. What I plan to do to make it Gaston County different is I plan to be there in the courthouse. I plan to be there and have a voice. I plan to stand up for each individual. I plan to push the legislators and our local officials to understand why those resources are important. It's one thing to say that we need these changes. It's another thing to actually get there and push and to ask difficult questions and to upset folks who may not want those questions to be asked. Because ultimately, regardless of any affiliations, doing the right thing for our community is always going to be what's first in Gaston County. That's what we should be focused on. We should be focused on putting our people first and making sure that they have the resources that they need, because with our success as a county, it starts with the people here. We cannot have any success without individuals being built up and having the resources that they need, having opportunities, having an ability to, when needed, have a second chance. Not everybody deserves a second chance sometimes because they've already had a very stern warning in their first chance. But evaluating those individually and seeing where we're going with that person and whether or not that person truly desires help at that point, or whether sitting down for a time period is appropriate for them. But being individualistic, that's what my plan is. That's how I believe that Gaston County gets to where it needs to be. That goes for businesses too. That's not just in the court system. It's figuring out whether a business deserves a second chance, whether they deserve an opportunity to demonstrate to the community that they are trying to work in their best interests. We are so quick to judge now in this new social media era and to get our Twitter fingers going, or X fingers, whatever we call it now, that we forget that there are human beings behind everything we do. Businesses require human beings to operate. Although we're heading to the AI world, it does still require human presence. And a human presence and human touch is what's going to make Gaston County different. So I think Gaston County really needs to focus on our kids. I think that our kids here are remarkably smart. We have a fantastic educational system. Our teachers are amazing here, and they really truly have our kids at their best mind, with their hearts in the right place. What I want those kids to know, though, is that it doesn't matter whether you grow up in East Gastonia, West Gastonia, Bessemer City, Krause, wherever you are, Dallas, Mount Holly, Stanley, Cherryville. It doesn't matter where you came from or what your situation is. There are opportunities here, and there are people who care. There are people who want to see you be successful. There are people who don't want you to be involved in anything that's going to prevent you from reaching your dreams. You have to dream outside of the world that you're living in right now. And I'm proof of that. My dad's proof of that. He grew up on Crowder's Mountain where there wasn't a lot to do and there wasn't a lot of opportunities, but his parents gave him that permission to dream bigger. Same thing with my mom. My grandparents gave her permission to dream bigger, and they took that opportunity and have had success because of that. And it's the same thing with us. As a child, I had an opportunity to dream bigger. We as community members should really focus on encouraging and really cultivating that mentality of dreaming bigger and giving folks an opportunity to know that they are not confined by where they are in this moment. Gaston County it's not a product of what people believe that we are. And that's one of the hardest things about Gaston County is that we're this redheaded stepchild, and I've got redheaded stepchildren, so it's okay for me to say that, of Charlotte and the Charlotte metro area. In reality, we're the crown jewel of it. We're the folks that truly care and truly work hard and really want to see our neighbors succeed. Let's not let that mindset that others want to force on us change who we are as people and change who we have been for decades, because we are better than that, and we are a community of opportunities.